Hello and many thanks for joining us on the program. I am Imonia Marere. Over the last couple of months, the leading political parties in Nigeria have been enmeshed in one form of crisis or the other, resulting in splits, factions, suspensions of officials and members, as well as court orders and injunctions. What ordinarily should be routine exercises of electing party officials at every level have degenerated into major political battles of wit and contests for superiority and control. Most of these came to a head during the last weekend as Nigeria's ruling party, the All Progressives Congress (APC), conducted what can be described as fractious state congresses. The results, as reported by major news outlets, was confusion, controversy, violence, and the emergence of parallel executives in as many states. In 2 or 3 others, the congresses were either suspended or cancelled, ostensibly to avoid a breakdown of law and order. The same was the case a few weeks back when the leading opposition People's Democratic Party (PDP) had its congresses. In fact, the party is still reeling from internal crisis as it heads to its national convention in less than 2 weeks. This disorderly conduct by party members and officials has been a major concern and a possible threat to the survival of democracy itself. What is very glaring from the conduct of the affairs of political parties is the absence of discipline, internal democracy and cohesion, the absence of robust mechanisms for self-regulation, and above all, the lack of an overriding philosophy or ideology to which members subscribe and owe allegiance. Critics and observers alike say the parties, as conceptualized and set up, are mere political special purpose vehicles designed for the sole purpose of capturing power at any level and thereafter discarded. But is this the original reason and intent of forming political parties? Or is this peculiar to Nigeria alone? Is the absence of clearly defined guiding principles or ideological precepts turning the parties into mere social clubs where anything goes? How will this intra-party dysfunctionality likely impact the choice or selection of candidates for the 2023 inter-party contestations at every level? What exactly is the challenge with the structure and operational systems of the political parties? Now, unfortunately, since after the 2019 general elections, when the over 90 political parties were reduced by deregistration to just about 18, all the other parties except the few holding power at state and federal levels have been inactive or even more gone into oblivion. This tends to suggest that the party system is not rooted in any ideological space, nor are they people-centered, and are thus not providing any credible alternatives. What needs to be done to revamp Nigeria's political parties, which are key to building an enduring political culture and a viable democratic system? Now join us, my panelists and I, who are here in the studio and joining us virtually, to scrutinize the matters that are arising from what many are beginning to describe as rancor within the ranks of Nigeria's leading political parties. All right, let's get to meet our panel of analysts. Right here in the studio with me is Dr. Adagbo Onoja. Dr. Onoja teaches political science at the Veritas University here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us. Joining us via Zoom is Mr. Sam Kagbo, who is a legal practitioner. Mr. Kagbo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much for hearing me, for having me.
All right. Mr. Kagbo is there. We are also joined by Dr. Abubakar Kari. Dr. Abubakar Kari is of the Department of Political Sociology at the University of Abuja. Dr. Kari, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Imoni, for having me.
Okay. We also expect to join us very shortly Dr. Adamu Muhammad, who is of the Department of Political Science at the Federal University in Gusau in Zamfara State. We hope that he's able to join us as soon as possible. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Let's start from here, Dr. Onoja. The crisis in the major political parties in Nigeria is of concern to so many people who are concerned that this just might be a threat to Nigeria's democracy. We can no longer say that our democracy is fledgling anymore after 22 years of uninterrupted democratic practice. What do you think is at the root of what's going on?
Yeah, I think anybody or groups of people who are concerned about the state of the parties are correctly primed on the issue. You cannot have liberal democracy without political parties that are well organized to operationalize the tenets of liberal democracy. You know, that's a major disconnect if it happens. And from your editorial, we have seen that there are problems. The anarchy, the chaos that characterize the simple process of electing and replacing the leaders of the party. The question you're asking is, what's the problem? I think the problem is that if you follow the historical trajectory of political parties in Nigeria, you see that these ones do not have any resemblance with the parties that we have had, especially in the First Republic and even up to the Second Republic. In the Second Republic, it used to be said, how could you go in front of Chief Awolowo or in the presence of Malam Aminu Kano and misbehave or refuse to carry out instructions? In any case, these instructions would have been arrived at through a process of comprehensive debate from which everybody, kind of centrally contributed and which everybody shared in one way or the other. So if these are not happening, then we can see a disconnect between the old and the new. And the question will arise as to why they are happening like this. I think you can connect it at the end of the day. In the final analysis, you connect it to the character of the system we are operating. The quality of our capitalism, the quality of our democracy reflects the quality of our capitalism. Our capitalism is unproductive, it's speculative, it lacks discipline. And those are the same characteristics that have been transferred to the organization of political party and the succession of leadership. So the grooming that ought to attend the processes in the political parties assume the character and the disruptive nature of this capitalism. And in that case, the place to go to, if you are looking for why the parties are chaotic, is the ordering system in the nature of the capitalism we are practicing. In other countries, like if you take some of the Southeast Asian countries, party processes are disciplined. Disciplined to the extent that since everybody subscribes to a minimum, everybody also finds as a basis for allegiance. There is legitimation. There is legitimacy of the party leaders of the party ideology, of the party processes. So there is no point jumping the gun. Here, that legitimacy is not there. So you ask yourself, what is the minimum to which APC subscribes, and to which you also subscribe if you are an APC member, irrespective of whether you are in Anambra or whether you are in Zamfara or whether you are in Adamawa, wherever you are. Once they say APC, you know the minimum. What is that there now that you can see? The same thing with the PDP, and not to talk of the other parties that are silent basically most of the time. So if we are looking for where the problem is coming from, let us forget about the variables, go to the root. And that's what I said, the nature of the social system we are operating, which comes up, manifests in the way we run governments, manifests in the way we run parties, manifests in the way we execute government projects, manifests in everything we do.
All right. Let me turn to Mr. Kagbo. Well, it's been suggested, just like Dr. Onoja has said, that perhaps the absence of defining principles, what you may call basic ideological precepts on which some of these parties or all of them stand, is responsible for the situation that we find in the political parties today, where the parties are run by the rule of the thumb, as it were, and it appears that they are resorting to what one may describe as the rule of state of nature, where the most powerful, whether financially or otherwise, holds sway at any point in time.
Well, let me start by saying that every generation in any country in the world, it generates its own leaders, it generates its own institutions, and its own political culture. As a lawyer, let me start with what I think is actually responsible for what we are having. The law, in its own wisdom, pick out and set aside political parties. Of all other associations in the country, they say it's only political parties that can present candidates for elections. And it is also political parties that are supposed to present or constitute the personnel for governance. And you know, as I know, governance is the most lucrative economy in the land. And therefore, any institution, any authority, or any entity that is given that sole power or that sole route through which an individual can go into governance, definitely that particular entity would have the pressure you have from desperate people. Unfortunately for us, in as much as you have given that sort of power to the political parties themselves are helpless after the elections. Unlike other places like South Africa or perhaps Britain, where you have parties their members, here, the moment the person slips through the party into an elective office, the party loses its power over that person. From that moment, he becomes an independent candidate. And therefore, he owes no particular loyalty to the political party. And because of that, when it comes to this particular time whereby the primaries are meant to constitute people who would, at the end of the day, be very pivotal to the choosing of candidates for political parties, then the desperate nature in all of us sets in. That is why you have all of this chaos. The chaos here you are seeing, for me, I'm not bothered, because definitely it would not go beyond the elections.
let me come back to you, Dr. Onoja. And the summary of what Mr. Kagbo seemed to say is that, look, the nature, the foundations of these political parties necessarily makes them as chaotic and as rancorous as they are. And that each time we are moving towards an election, we should expect these kind of challenges that they are having at the moment, because, as it were, strong men and strong women are the ones who are in charge. And perhaps immediately after the elections, we begin to see some measure of calmness in the parties, and then as we move towards another election, there comes again all this crisis.
I take note of his point about what looks like an error in making political parties the only legitimate platforms upon which to contest. I take note of that. Not necessarily that I agree with it, but I think it's a valid point in the social analysis of the problems we are encountering. The point I find difficult to accept is the fact that during elections like this, you have this anarchy is to be expected, and no. It's a manifestation of something deeply wrong with the system. In the sense that if you call it a political party, the moment you call it a political party, there is something that every member ought to have internalized. And therefore, behaving out of the rule of the game is something to watch. It's an early warning. Because once you internalize those elements about which makes a political party, you behave in a particular way. So that when I see a Democrat, I say, oh, no, it's a Democrat. He's speaking the language of the Democrat. When I hear a Republican, an NPN man, a PDP person, an APC person, the moment that's not happening, then there's something to worry about. Let me tell you the story that a senior political scientist told me. He said Julius Nyerere was so concerned when these sort of things were manifesting that he kept aside his job as the initial prime minister. I think he was called prime minister initially. He left the job and went round. He said, look, we have to build the party first, because without the party, we don't have democracy. We don't have anything. So when these things are manifesting like this, the way it is not something to be taken as something that will happen and disappear, when it shows so many things. It shows that there is no ideological take-up point that unites everybody who belongs to the party. It shows that there is no leadership recruitment process in the party. At any point, a well-organized political party has a way of filtering from the crowd who will take which particular positions, who will articulate what. It means that is not happening. It means there is no party school where you go and get oriented towards the ideology of the party, where you get it knocked into your head in a way that it sticks. It also shows that there is no party document that you ever read at all. So what you have, I think you used one language in your editorial about, it's a vehicle designed for, so the party becomes a vehicle.
Special purpose vehicles.
Yeah, special purpose vehicle, just for you to capture power. And the Kagbo is saying something too, that immediately the person gets into power, he becomes an independent candidate. The party doesn't matter again. I think let me say that in 1998, the PDP, for instance, was anticipating this kind of chaos. So they put an unusual mechanism, what they call the Board of Trustees. These are people who have achieved so much in life that a sitting president who goes before them will be shaken, because they have either run very credible government, executed very worthy programs, or have got a larger-than-life image in life. They don't care about you being Mr. President. When you go before them, you have to behave yourself. So they put a Board of Trustees so that presidents and people who get into power will not start misbehaving because they are in power. And somehow the Board of Trustees team was corrupted, and today it's just it doesn't matter in the parties.
Almost every party now has a Board of Trustees.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter. The people who get into the Board of Trustees, I don't think that they have the kind of pedigree. If you want to know what the Board of Trustees, look at the first set of people who made the Board of Trustees of the PDP. I'm not saying the PDP is an exceptional party, but they brought an idea that belonged to the First Republic, that was not usual. That was a critique of what the military left in terms of the idea of politics. Politics wasn't like this before. So it's something to worry about. It's the starting point if you want to make a correction. The commandist ideology has taken over, specially designed vehicle. People who have got money, they come into the party, they want certain things, they have fixed their mind on it, they are not going to wait for any party processes. So you have parallel congresses and different results.
And party rules do not matter to them,
Yeah.
if there are any.
If there are any.
All right, let's see if we can get back to Dr. Abubakar Kari now. Dr. Kari, are you with us now?
Yeah, I can hear you very well now.
Okay, great. I'm sure you've been listening to our analysts here in the studio and Mr. Sam Kagbo, who's also joined us virtually like you. And we are beginning to wonder, why is it that in this dispensation, the political parties are what they are? If you compare them to what was, say, in the Second Republic, during the MPN, the UPN, the GMPP, the APP as it were then, it doesn't seem as if there is a basis for comparison in terms of party organization, party discipline, and party structure and all of that.
Barrister Kabo raised one germane issue about political culture. I think what is playing out now, the desperation within the political parties, yes, it is related to ideology as canvassed by, is rooted in the very poor and appalling political culture that exists within the Nigerian political system in this Fourth Republic. There are 2 or 3 very negative values that characterize the subsisting political culture. The major one is the apparent lack of internal party democracy. 21 years that the Republic has been on, the political parties have not been able to nurture, germinate, and grow viable political culture in terms of internal party democracy. They willfully, recklessly, and deliberately break their own rules. Some big men and women have also emerged, the so-called godfathers and godmothers. They are the ones that run the show. They are ones that determine who gets what. The Nigerian constitution, the political party constitution, the universal cardinal principles of democracy do not count. And this is quite contrary to what obtained in the earlier republics. To a very large extent, during the earlier republics, the parties obeyed their own rule as much as possible. Even in the much discredited and abortive thought republic, at least there was some semblance of internal party democracy. But these days, there is even anything like that. Individuals and tendencies, particularly governors, both present and former governors, insist on taking over the parties and running the entire show. So this is actually what is happening. Lack of internal party democracy and the tendency of the political actors and actresses not to obey even their own. The parties have been appropriated, they have been taken over by individuals and groups to further their own interest, even if that interest clearly conflicts with the interest of the party, interest of the country, and interest of democracy itself. So for me, that is actually what is happening.
Now, if you look at some of the political parties, but particularly so, the ruling party in Nigeria today, you would expect that a party that has the president and has a majority of state governors at that level will be better organized and more better structured than it is at the moment. You have a party that parades the president, the vice president, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And here you are having almost half of the states of the country having crises, having factions, having parallel congresses, and having parallel executives, as it were. You would expect that there should be some measure of control and some measure of order from this set of people. Why do you think this is happening?
The reality is that the stronger the party, the more likelihood in the present dispensation that democratic tenets are going to be subverted. APC has been caught in the labyrinth of crisis because it is assumed that it is the major party. It is assumed that it is stronger. It is assumed that it has the capacity to succeed itself in 2023. So the stakes appear to be quite higher in the APC and to a very large extent the PDP than the other parties. So that is why these so-called godfathers, these so-called tendencies and groups, the governors forum, the legislators, the big men and women within the party in the APC appear to be more desperate. So the desperation is higher in the APC because of the belief, rightly or wrongly, that it is the most viable platform. And the PDP, being another very, very viable platform too, is likely to be afflicted with the virus of conflict because of the lack of internal party democracy. Mark you, most of the elements or many of the elements within the APC were in PDP before. And some of the elements in the PDP have also changed to the APC. So there is no difference in terms of substance, in terms of ideology, in terms of focus, even in terms of interest between the APC and the PDP. They believe in the same thing. They appear to share the same strategy, the same tactics, and the same ambition. The ambition to dominate the political space, the ambition to perpetuate themselves, and to use whatever means, fair or foul, to perpetuate themselves in power. That is exactly what is playing out. And the stronger the party, the more likelihood that individuals and groups will attempt to hijack it, will attempt to use it to further and pursue their own interests.
All right, Mr. Kago, let's turn to you and to look at the existence of, as of today, there are 18 official political parties in Nigeria. But everywhere you turn, all you hear about are just the two main political parties, the ruling APC, the main opposition PDP. What has happened to them? Why have they become so inactive? Or is it correct to assume, as have been suggested in some quarters, that some of these parties were simply put together by members of these two major political parties as fallback positions if and when it becomes necessary?
I agree with you entirely on that last point of it. But my word, in a word, if you want me to describe them and state why they are comatose, is because in the first place, they are not viable. And I believe entirely that they were not really established to form an alternative to the two political parties. Let me talk about the two political parties and put them against those other parties. Money, the economy of politicking and the political party itself, it's actually at the bottom of all that we are talking about here. Let me make a passing word as regards to PDP before coming to the APC itself, which is the party in power and which I can criticize very freely. Let me put this poser. If you take away Governor Wike from PDP, how much of PDP would you have? Definitely PDP may be sounding or may have the same weight as the other parties without a financier. So usually the financier becomes what? The god of the party, and like somebody rightly stated there, he appropriates the party and becomes the party. The same thing with the APC. Now coming back to the APC, you rightly stated that it is actually an irony that a party in government and a party that has so many governors here and there could also be a mess in the crisis that it is now experiencing. The reason is simple. The political party by itself has been appropriated. Where on earth would you find a situation where a group of individuals would put aside the structure of a political party and put in place what they call an interim committee that is not contemplated by the party? Where would you find that in the books of the APC? And I have asked people to say, have you actually looked at the Constitution, what it says about the formation and the sustenance of a political party? The Constitution insists and make it point clear that the way you are constituted for registration, that is the structure that you have for registration, you must have it right through your livelihood, your life. But here we are, they put aside the structures of the party and what? Form what they call a caretaker committee. And where is that power coming from? Nowhere. And the simple reason is because the political party to them is just, like I said, the vehicle for them to come to power. And once they get into power, they become what? The gods of their own. The issue now becomes like the tail wagging the dog. Like you said, in those days of the Achilles, those days of old, how dare you? You could never have contemplated a situation where a group of individuals will hijack a political party, the party, and start ruling it from their enclaves. It would have been impossible. But this is the situation we have now. Nobody is patient again. We live in an era where people want things done like yesterday. We live in an era where things are done by the click of the button. And when they find that, oh, if you go through the rules and if they are to be bound by the rules, the process will be tedious, they put aside the structure and start running things through their own, what would I call now, initiatives. This is what we are having. Definitely the other political parties, you will even have more by the time we go into the election process. Once you now have the space open for politicking and campaigns, definitely a group of people from among the two political parties would also now start putting structures in place that they will call political party for the simple reason of a fallback position. But thankfully, I'm hoping that these direct primaries would be sustained, and INEC would ensure that all primaries will be held in one day, so that if you lose in your political party, you will no longer have any room to go to another party to go and contest the elections. Because what was happening those days was that when you lose the primaries in one political party, you dash to the other one that is readily available for you. And that to me, is the reason why you have all of these things. Believe me, let me put it this way. Nobody would tell me that we can ever really have political parties the way they are dreamt to be, as long as we have the provisions of the Constitution regarding political parties the way they are. Where the political parties are working, like in America, you can't find one word about political parties in the statute books. And the political parties are meant and are ensured that they work themselves out to gain relevance. And that is why anything you want to talk about the Western political culture or democratic culture is generated by the political parties, because what? Their fortunes are not thrown at them by the statute books. But here, without you doing anything, they create an economic for you by simply saying that you cannot go into any political office or you cannot seek for any political election without going through the political party. That by in itself has created a very veritable economy. So until we have a look at those provisions and create room for example, independent candidates, we may be having these problems that we are having.
All right, Dr. Noja, let me turn to you. What do you foresee happening as we move towards 2023? Do you see a situation where these parties might be able to resolve their differences, internal differences, and be able to present a formidable front for the inter-party contestations? I ask this because already we are beginning to hear of some politicians talking of mass defections here and there. And as an addendum to that, do you think that in the APC, for instance, that the president has lost control of the party that brought him to power? If you look at how well, for instance, President Olusegun Obasanjo held the PDP together during his 8 years as president, and what is happening now? Is there a possibility that the president has lost control of the APC?
Let me take the first part first. By some magic, because no matter the degree of rascality, there is also ambition to remain in power. So they might be able to manage to conduct elections, very awkward elections. But whether they are able to do that or they don't, the point is that we should worry very, very highly about what is going on. Because again, to illustrate this, we have to keep going back. Look at the NPN in the Second Republic. That's the party of the status quo, of the privileged. But if you recall, all the people who financed NPN got nothing. I don't know whether it is decent for me to name names. They didn't get anything. They didn't become anything in the party. They brought the money that made the NPN to capture power, but they didn't get anything. They didn't get anything relative to what party owners have today in terms of total control. There was discipline, there was party processes. The best they got was, okay, you bring a candidate, we'll make him a minister. Olusola Saraki was a key financier. The late Olusola Saraki, he didn't get anything. He got only Senate leader. Okay? There were others, about 4 of them, that brought the big money that got this thing. Why? Today you have the party in your pocket if you brought the money, the biggest amount of money. So there is something there to worry about. So they might be able to conduct elections and swear themselves in and so on and so forth. It does not detract from the fact that we are encountering a basically challenging moment in our democratic journey. Now, as for President Buhari, I don't want to be held responsible for dismissing a whole president. But his background warrants that because he has no pedigree in managing a party. He's a military commander. And there is no way he can be so intelligent as to learn how these things are done if you put him along the same line with the masters of the game. And in that sense, you like...
President Obasanjo also came from a military
background. Obasanjo did not manage the PDP the way it was planned. He managed it in his own image. We have to make the distinction. How many people were the top guys in Obasanjo's government? About 6 of them were all military. Is that how to run a party? Where is the PDP Board of Trustees thing? Everything assumed the image of Obasanjo. Obasanjo had a larger-than-life image. He happened to be privileged to know a lot of things, so he could manage. He could run these things without the thing spilling over for everybody to see. But it's not everybody who has the advantages that Obasanjo has had in terms of Nigeria. When Chief Oyegun was the chairman of the APC, you could see if he were there now, I am almost sure that certain things will not happen, because it's a product of that generation. And that's the point of excitement in the coming of Dr. Ayu. I hope he becomes the national chairman of the PDP. He is not of that generation, but he had close interaction with people who were the intervening variables in the transition point. Secondly, is educated enough beyond beyond certificate education to know what a correct party should be, what the party line is all about, what the party notions about things are, party orientation, running a party school, building cadres, and things like that. They are not strange to him. But when you pick somebody who has no pedigree, no matter how intelligent he might be, how well-intentioned, how sober, he does not know what it means. Because when you become a party leader, you do certain things in spite of yourself. The president has military pedigree. And we are told in this country that only 2 of them have conquered their military background to transform into civilians. It's there in the newspaper. It's not a new thing. So, and Buhari is not on that list, which means these things that you are seeing on in terms of the crisis in the party have to do with the party leadership, because a party is not because of numerous members. You have millions of a party must have a core. It's the core that sits there and decides that this thing cannot happen, that one cannot happen. And that's why I started by mentioning Chief Awolowo. Yeah, if he's there sitting down at a meeting where Chief Awolowo is sitting down, do you think some of these things happen? You went and held a contrary Congress. Where are you going to go with it? If you are talking of, he is commander of both the intellectual forces, the field officers, the ideological commander. So what are you going to do? How are you going to even think of this thing? You have to think properly to be able to challenge that sort of system. And there is the build is a hegemonic thing. They conscientize everybody in such a way that you don't see anything illegal or what's challenging in what is being done. And there is some element of transparency. They can remove a winner of an election and say, no, he won election, but he's not a good cadre. They could do it. But today, that caucus that would run the show do not exist. People who have got a lot of money can do many things within the party system. So to sort out this problem, we need leadership recruitment into the hierarchy of the political parties. The national chairman must be people with pedigree, who know what it is all about. It's one thing to know that this is the correct thing to do and to do a contrary thing. It's another thing not to know at all what is the correct thing and to just imagine the answers from your head. Right now, we're having people who are not party builders who become national chairmen of the political parties, and a lot of things go haywire. They just can't control the parties.
Well, Dr. Kari, let's come to you for perhaps what would be your final thoughts on this. We'll begin to look at how to reform these parties. They have been created, they have been registered, and so reforming them is what is necessary and very, very imperative at this point in time. How do we go about this? Dr. Noja has said, has put a lot on the table in terms of perhaps leadership recruitment and all of that. But that will take a lot of time. We are moving towards 2023, and we need solutions to the problems, to the crises that are on the tables of the various political parties.
Well, I'm afraid that I'm quite pessimistic because the problem is systemic. It is rooted in the foundation of the parties themselves. Unfortunately, the Fourth Republic political parties do not operate strictly as political parties. They are more or less political platforms and vehicles through which politicians simply use to power. And the culture of impunity, the culture of willful disobedience, willful violation of the very essence of the parties themselves has become so rooted. So rooted. So that's why between now and 2023, personally, I'm not expecting much of change within the political parties. It is unfortunate that I'm so pessimistic, but the solution is very, very simple. All the parties need to do is to respect their own rules. If they can respect their own rules, respect the 1999 Constitution, and respect the cardinal principles of democracy. Democracy is built upon certain principles, 3 or 4 of them: choice, participation, rule of law. So all the political parties need to reform themselves is to strictly abide by these time-honored principles. We cannot build democracy in a situation where the choice of individual, the choice of members of the party, the choice of aspirants and candidates are willfully denied and violated. We cannot also nurture political parties unless and until all members are allowed to fully participate and participate fully. They should be given the opportunities to self-actualize, to realize their ambitions, to pursue their own ambitions and hopes. And as I continuously mention, the solution also lies in the political parties respecting the rule of law. Otherwise, we'll continue to operate in a system of chaos. The way the political parties now operate is quite chaotic. It is tantamount to doing anything just to achieve your own ambition. They don't care. They are not interested whether they bring down the roof at the end of the day, as long as they will get what they want. So they thrive on willful violation of tenets of democracy, because as far as they are concerned, the end justifies the means. We cannot continue that way. If we continue that way, our democracy is not going to prosper, we will not be taken seriously, we will continue to run in cycles. The parties are going to continue to witness crisis upon crisis, and they will not grow. Therefore, all they need to do is, for goodness sake, simply be democratic. In any case, you cannot nurture democracy if you yourself is not democracy. Just as they say in law, you cannot give what you don't have. The major crisis we have in our polity now is because our politicians are not democrats. And they need to be democratic. They need to behave and operate as democrats for our own democracy to prosper. So this is the minimum that is expected of them, even though, as I mentioned, I'm quite pessimistic whether they are capable of giving us even this basic irreducible minimum.
All right, Mr. Sam Kagbo, do you think that at any point in time, as we move toward 2023, that we can get what is described as political entrepreneurship out of the way and be more democratic in the organization and structure of the political parties?
No, I am not that hopeful, and it's difficult because let me work on what you presented. Political parties are not just the offices of the political parties. Somebody has rightly stated that political parties constitute aggregates of, or should constitute aggregate of ideologies and alternative thoughts. If we had political parties the way they are conceptualized or the way they are in the Western countries, for now, you could have a very clear alternative to APC, not just as a political party, but with respect to every aspect of our lives. The APC have their ministers, they have their agents here and there, public authorities who are speaking for them or on behalf of the political parties about their own idea of ruling and developing the country. But there is no other political party that has any other alternative speaker outside their political mouthpiece. Today, which other political party that can speak to me about how best to run the economy? Which political party that can tell me how best we can have public utilities? Which other political party that can speak to me about education, about health, about sports, about every aspect of life that would make life better for me? None, because they don't have that sixth sense. All they have, and all the sixth sense they have, and all the effort they put, even the structures they have, is about capturing political power. Beyond that, they are as empty as I am about every other aspect of governance. So if you now ask me to say whether I expect us to have anything better between now and the election, I would say no.
All right.
Because the foundation is not there, and there is nothing on the ground to give me that hope.
Okay.
The best I can hope for is, like the gentleman rightly stated there, is that in the midst of that chaos, they will have the steady mind to ensure that we go into the election peacefully and have a very peaceful and free and fair election.
All right, thank
Beyond
you so
that,
much, Mr. Akagbo.
Believe me, no other hope and no other positive thought on.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sam Kagbo, for your time. Thank you for your contributions. Mr. Sam Kagbo is a lawyer. He joined us via Zoom. Thank you for your time. And we were also joined via Zoom by Dr. Abubakar Kari from the Department of Political Sociology at the University of Abuja. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, right here in the studio, we have Dr. Adagbo Onoja, who also teaches political science at the Veritas University here in Abuja. I thought that you had acquired that already.
No. It's still in the making.
Okay, great. It will come soon.
By God's
Great.
grace.
Thank you so much, Adagbo Onoja. All right, that's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.